This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. In breaking news, leading scientists worldwide are conducting experiments to determine if Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. However, it appears the study was inconclusive, as the scientists couldn't help but eat all the Reese's. Because when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's. Find Reese's now at a store near you.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, now streaming only on Netflix.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Before My Time. I am your host, Gelsey Laurie. We are joined by Matt Kelly, our friend, co-host, and producer. I like how I just call you a friend all the time. Our friend, because you are, Matt. All right, we are talking about the Titanic. That's right. I'm taking on the monstrous beast itself. Let's dive into this. See what I did there?
Across the distance and spaces between us, you have come to show you. Go on.
We're here to entertain you. We'll sing your songs for good times, the best times. You can't go wrong. We'll two-step, a new step. It won't be long when the Dixielanders are playing. Soon you'll be swaying, so come on, sing along.
All right, Gelsey, you have been pitching that we talk about the Titanic for quite a bit. I think it actually got a re-release this February. So
It did. It's like
not?
in the theaters right now.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. Tell me about the Titanic.
Yeah, we're not really going to talk too much about the Titanic and the icebergy whoopsie. I mean, a little bit. There's, you know me. I'm like, we're going to focus on this thing, and then I'm going to throw random facts at you just because I think they're interesting. But
Is this going to be like the Howard Hughes episode all over again?
It's the Howard Hughes episode. Oh, actually, my coffee is steeping right now, so we're not quite to that level. But maybe by the end of this episode, I'll be like, ah! Okay. But I wanted to focus more on the building of the Titanic. We always talk about the destruction. Why not focus on the creation?
All right. I'm into it. Okay, let's talk about it.
The idiots who built it. Okay. So it was a warm summer's evening of 1907, and managing director of White Star Line, Bruce Ismay, and senior partner and chairman of the shipyard, Harland and Wolff, Lord Pierre, conspired to build a ship bigger and better than its rival company, the Cunard Line. See how prepared I was? God, I sound like
Look at
that was
that.
so
You
nice.
crushed that.
I know. All right. So
Home
yeah,
run, out of the park.
and just cut it there. People will just listen to that. They'll be like, that was so good. No, so basically the Titanic was 1907, and White Star Line wanted to compete with its rival company, Cunard, who had not only the largest ships, but the Cunard had two ships called the Lusitania, which was renowned for her luxury, and then the Mauritania. What? Like, can we get simpler names, you guys? Held the unofficial record for the fastest crossing of the Atlantic, which was a record that doesn't get beaten until 1929. So White Star decides not necessarily to attempt to compete on speed, but rather build larger and more luxurious ships than those ships. And there are 3 ships that get commissioned for this rivalry competition. My dick is bigger than your dick. That's basically what's happening here. And the 3 ships are the Olympic, the Titanic, and where the hell is the third name?
The Mayflower.
And the The White Star Line decided to make not just one ship, but 3 ships to compete their rival company. And they went out, what's the word for it? I said commissioned. There you go. Commissioned the Titanic, the Britannic, and the Olympic. So 3 ships were put out for that commission because one is not enough. So work began in December 1907 on the first of the 3, the Olympic. And the Olympic Titanic, they were built side by side, but they were so large. I mean, the Titanic was the largest man-made thing ever made to that point. So that's a pretty big deal back in early 1900s. But because it was so large and this was, the shipyards almost weren't made for this, they had to build a gantry first to build the ships. And it was the largest gantry pretty much ever built. It was 228 feet tall. And that starts the Titanic construction on March 31st, 1909. The hull of the ship, it took, 26 months to build in total from keel to launch. And approximately 14,000 men were employed during those 26 months for various jobs. The average hours worked per week on the shipyard were 49 hours per week. And the weekly wage of a construction worker was about £2 for the week.
Okay.
And they worked 6 days a week. So yeah, it was a lot, and they didn't get a lot of money, but different times. But it did take so it took over 1 year to fully frame the Titanic. The steel plates were set first, and then the frame was put, and then the steel plates were riveted to the frame. There were more than 3 million rivets held on the Titanic to hold the steel in place. And then on October 1910, the shell plating was complete. But the thing is that unlike many ships built at that time, which used strong steel rivets, those in the Titanic were mix of iron and steel, whilst even weaker iron rivets were used at the construction of the bow, which was the section of the ship that got struck by the iceberg. So don't cheap out. Use the strong shit. Like, it's funny. I actually went to Belfast, Ireland, and they have a Titanic museum there. And the reason I never thought about like the idea, because we think about the luxury, the decadence of the Titanic, and then most famously, of course, the sinking and Jack dying and not fitting on the door, which is fucking bullshit. But we never think about the construction of it. And I never would have until I went to this museum in Belfast, and they had this little like amusement ride almost. And it was like these little buggies that you go through, and there's animatronics, and it was a ride showing, like, talking about the building. And I was blown away. And I was like, I never thought about this part. And it talks about like, it had like a little animatronic guy like in the dark, like banging a rivet in, and said that like a lot of the workers ended up going deaf due to this project because they're just banging against steel.
Yeah.
Which, it's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but years ago I was in Florida and I was helping a friend remove floors from her condo. And I had this like big steel like pick to go under the wood floors and a hammer. And I was hammering it in to get out. And it took me about halfway through the room that I was like, I'm literally blowing out my eardrums. It was really bad, and I could tell it was damaging. So I was like I started putting a towel over to muffle it. Doesn't matter. But taking that now to the nth degree of 3 million rivets needing to be banged into the ship.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And that noise, but then also there's no light. And so like when they're going into the ship, the electric, nothing's put in yet. So they're in these like dark tunnels with maybe like a candle flashlight kind of thing, just banging away. Like, how miserable.
Yeah, I think of my dad recently has gotten really obsessed with the Molly Maguires. I'm not sure how familiar you are with them or anything, but it was like an Irish mob. In the movie, they were all coal miners, and it was like the first time that I ever really thought about when they're down there, they're wearing these hats that have just like an elongated front to it with a candle.
And that's
in the
it.
front
And there's no other light. That's terrifying.
Yeah, that's horrible. Like, I was like, that is so creepy and scary to me.
Same with like the caverns. Like, have you ever visited like any caverns? Or I went to like Merrimack Caverns and outside of St. Louis, and that's the same where you see these beautiful, and there's the stalagmites and stalactites, but they have all the railing and the paths they've built and the lighting that's all beautiful to make it blue. But I was like, someone had to come into this cave when it was in its natural state of pitch black and explore it with like one single light. Fuck no. No, thank you.
Yep, not a
Not
chance.
the job for me.
Here's the thing I want to know about the Titanic. I'm
Okay.
very curious about this. I don't know if it's the joke, but like the thing that people remember is essentially that this ship sank on its very first voyage and that it was
Mhm.
being advertised as the unsinkable ship. What made them so confident that this ship was unsinkable when it also sounds like, as you've already told us, they were using the cheap rivets and stuff on it?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the start being cockiness,
Okay.
but oh god, of course
Like, do
it's
you think that
venting
they truly believed it was unsinkable, or do you think that that
Uh-huh,
was like a selling point for them?
both.
Okay.
I 1,000% think it was both because, even I mean, now this is more prices when it first sank and they released press and newspaper, they said that no, there were no casualties, is how it was first
Oh,
released to
wow.
the press,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Okay. Yeah. There
definitely
was
not
only
true.
50 people on the ship, thankfully, and there
Yeah,
was plenty
exactly.
of
1,500 people died.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
no, no.
so
It's
right here
fake
is your
news
answer.
is what they said.
I have your answer. The Titanic was claimed to be virtually unsinkable due to its watertight construction. It had 15 watertight bulkheads that divided the ship into 16 compartments. The thought was that if the 4 smaller compartments flooded, the boat could still float. However, the bulkheads only reached about 10 feet above the waterline, allowing water to reach from one compartment to the other, thus defeating the purpose of the bulkheads. So their whole design was just a fail.
Okay. So
But they thought it was a watertight ship. And again, I think it was just the whole point of them building the ship was literally, again, I said it, is a my dick is bigger than your dick kind of a competition. And when you're going in with that, no pun intended, cockiness, um, it's, I think you're kind of tooting your own horn. You think this is going to be great and you don't even oversight the what ifs because you just already, I'm all about faith, trust, and pixie dust here, folks, but also reality check. Shit
I've
happens and you
never
need
heard that
to.
before. I'm going to use that all the time
What?
now.
From Peter Pan?
Faith, trust, and pixie dust. I've never heard
Yeah,
that
that's all you
before.
need. That's all you need to fly. All you need is a little faith and trust. Oh, and dust. I forgot. Just a
Wow.
little bit of pixie dust. I watch Peter
And
Pan.
I guess I've
Um,
never heard it said so confidently
I'm a very
before.
confident person selling you a bunch of bullshit. So, all of you that are
Welcome
listening
to
right
the
now, you're like, what
podcast.
the fuck? Signing off right now. She's selling us shit. Just like they sold the Titanic to a lot of people with a lot of money. They were like, okay, so yeah, we all know they fucked up. But so the Titanic visually, we know it has 4 smokestacks or funnels, but only 3 actually carried smoke from the furnaces. The 4th was said to be for ventilation, but it was actually just aesthetic purposes. So when they were building it and had those plans, they were like, we only need 3. And then the owners were like, no, but all the luxurious ships have 4. People won't trust it if there's only 3. And they're like, okay, we can just put one here that does nothing. So not all of the smokestacks were actually operational. Some things are just for looksies.
Well, thank God they did
And
it just for looksies because that really changed the results of
maybe
everything.
if they didn't have that bullshit smokestack, they wouldn't have sank.
Yeah, just throwing that out there. There's a lot of things that could have happened if they didn't do bullshit.
Starting with money, let's talk about how much the Titanic cost to build. So
Yeah.
after it sank, there was kind of an inquiry, and Bruce Ismay stated that the Titanic was just a bit over $7 million. So $7,500,000 is like the ish-nish number. And based on inflation and modern day exchange rates, this would put it at about 166 million, which ironically is less than it cost the making of the 1997 movie Titanic, which was
Wow.
200 million.
Wow.
So it cost more money to make the movie than it actually did to build the Titanic.
There you go. Just James Cameron just signing checks.
He's like, I know what I'm doing. I don't want to go too much into it and I don't have the facts up in front of me, but if you Google, there's like Reddit accounts and there's some really fun articles that are like random facts about the making of Titanic. And there's some really interesting stuff, like a lot of he actually made them sit in freezing cold water. The water that they like built this big pool to film everything was really cold. And so the scene where Kate Winslet gets in, I think she has the axe in her hand and she's going to save Jack when he's locked up. God, I haven't watched this in forever. But she gets into the water and she like screams, which it works. You're like, great acting. It's so cold. That was very real. They were like, that was actually her reaction to getting into that freezing water.
Oh.
And everyone on the set, or all the actors under their costumes that were in the water for long periods of time, they all wore wetsuits. But Kate Winslet was the only one that didn't. She did end up getting really sick because
Yeah.
cold water is stupid. Like, you can't. I think I read, no, I did read that the water, when it did sink, was 28 degrees. Obviously, most of the deaths were caused by hypothermia. And according to the American Red Cross, a water temperature of 79 degrees can lead to death after prolonged exposure, while
Jesus.
50 degrees can cause death in an hour and 30 degrees can be lethal in 15 minutes. So they were in 28. I mean, they were dead very quickly because which, thank God, kill me now. Like, don't make me sit in this and be miserable if I'm going to die. But that's crazy. I didn't realize that even like 50 degrees can kill you in an hour.
But you also have to think about, obviously the people in the water almost instantaneously, even the people in the lifeboats. You've got to imagine if the water temperature is that low
it's
and you're
still
surrounded by icebergs,
freezing.
it's got to be fucking freezing and you're not prepared to have to jump ship on the unsinkable ship.
I know.
So,
It's crazy. Well, speaking of ice all around, you're not wrong about this. And this is where, folks, I like to jump around on my facts, but they're interesting and you're learning something new. I am a walking Snapple fact. But the number of iceberg warnings they received that day were 6.
Jesus.
Which from other ships in the area on April 14th. And
So
3 messages.
The cockiness was off the charts with this.
I know. Three messages from the SS California, and a small steamer ship that had stopped approximately 19 miles from the luxury ship. The final warning was sent at 11 p.m. and they sent, "We are stopped and surrounded by ice." Yeah, it's nuts to think that. And I have some. Okay, but I'll get back to these. But let me finish out on the. So I said there's a lot of injuries. There were over 200, and I think over 250 injuries while building the Titanic, and 8 men died in the building. But did you know that there was an unwritten expectation in shipyards at the time that there was expected to have like 1 death for every 100,000 pounds spent? So at a building cost of 1.5 pounds, 1.5 hundred, whatever, what I mean. The Titanic toll would have been around 15 expectation. So the 8 was less than they expected, but it's kind of shitty. They just expect that, but when in the early 1900s, again, I'm glad to be alive today. It was May 1911 that the Titanic was released from its dry dock and the interior work began. So when my final cruise ship that I worked on for Celebrity Cruises was the Reflection. When I joined the ship, it was a brand new one. So we're doing the inaugural first sailing, that. We got flown to the ship while it was in dry dock. So it was, the frame and everything was done, and it would have been, no. Sorry. The ship was out of dry dock, which means it's out of the water. We met the ship when it just left dry dock. So when I was on the ship, we were 1 or 2 months in a port called Umshaven. There's nothing there. It's literally like a boat town there was like 1 bar people went to. And we called it church. And I saw the ship being built. Like, we'd be in the theater all day rehearsing the shows. And if we weren't rehearsing the shows, we were in safety trainings, because if the ship goes down, it's basically entertainment that's going to save you, FYI. They were building, like, we would go into the atrium of this giant cruise ship and there was no staircase. And then 2 days later, you'd go in and there was a staircase. So I was watching, you would just see chairs lined up with plastic. And it was kind of cool to see these like major cruise lines, like, it kind of be built on the inside and carpet being laid down, and it was crazy. But speaking of, I'll kind of go into my random little facts of a major cruise line versus the Titanic. So at the time, the Titanic was the biggest, it was most luxurious, but it stood a width of 92 feet. 92 feet. An average modern ship today is 119 feet. And the Symphony of the Seas, which is one of Royal Caribbean's big ass fuck you ships, is 137 feet wide.
All right. Got it.
It's crazy. I'm looking at a picture right now where they like literally show them next to each other. And you're like, so the height, the Titanic is 104 feet tall. A modern luxury ship today is 196 feet tall. And a ship like the Symphony of the Seas, the big fuck off ship, is 230 feet tall. So it's more than double the height of the Titanic. There were 8 decks on the Titanic, and there's 16 on these like mega cruise ships.
So we haven't gotten away from our hubris and cockiness. We've
Absolutely
just gotten
not.
a little bit more.
Well, there was 2,000, a little over 2,400 passengers on the Titanic. passengers and 900 crew. The Symphony of the Seas, jumping to like the big fuck off ship, is over 5,500 passengers and 2,200 crew. And I always said, like, when I was working, I was more on like the medium size, like 3,000 passengers, 1,200 crew is the average modern ship. And that's kind of give or take the ships I worked on were the size. But even those ships, I looked around and I was like, if this goes down, we're fucked. Like, there are too many people to navigate. And I've been on one of those lifeboats for a drill. You do not want to be on one of those and out at sea for a day, even an hour. I'm like, everyone would throw up and you're literally stacked like sardines on, like your feet are dangling over someone else's body. So if I got seasick, I would throw up on somebody and you're like encased. It's not open like the Titanic, oldie timesy boats. There's actually like it's like a little tube, like you're encased in it in case the waves are so, they would, if you're in the middle of the ocean, it would go over, so that they're designed to be able to tumble and kind of keep everyone alive, but you're not going to not be covered in throw up and it's going to smell awful. And literally, I think I would rather be the person that jumps off and gets hit by the propeller and dies. That's my thoughts on it. So anyways, obviously the luxury was no joke. That's kind of what they were striving for, was just how fancy we can make it. But third class was just not a problem of theirs and not a concern. And there were 700 third class passengers and they had to share 2 bathtubs. The entire, isn't that like, I mean, I know it wasn't like as like cool to take baths every day maybe then, but talk about stinky. 700 passengers shared 2 bathtubs. If I have to share 1 bathtub with one person, I'm like, this is a problem.
Yeah. No, I am I'm not a good person to have like how do I word this? If someone was to spend the night at my house, I very frequently am like, there's an upstairs bathroom for you, because like I'm not great at sharing that space anymore. Like that is my little get away from everyone else sanctuary.
Yeah, yes, the shower is my me time. And I grew up sharing a shower. My sister and I shared a bathroom, which with her I can do it. Like, it's if I'm really close, but 700 strangers.
Yeah.
Like, how does that work? Was there a little like clipboard sign up sheet?
Yeah. It hits that point too where it's like, look, I can handle my gross shit, but I don't need to know about anybody else's gross shit in the shower.
I've done communal bathrooms and like dormitory style living, and I really literally was like, I think I'm about to kill myself right now. This is the grossest thing. Anyways, let's talk about the icebergs again. So we know that because of the movie, is like the 2 lookouts are up there and they spot the iceberg and it's way too late. They had to rely on their eyesight alone because the ship's binoculars were locked inside a cabinet and no one could find the key. That's actually what happened on the Titanic, because why wouldn't they? And so the 2 lookouts that were there were Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee didn't have access to the binoculars. So there's a huge theory that that's one of the reasons. The ship's second officer was replaced at the last minute and forgot to hand off the key to the locker that housed the ship's binoculars. So they did resurface at an auction in 2010 and they were sold for over $130,000. People buy stupid shit. They're like, I have the original. You're like, for that much money, who the fuck cares?
Yeah. Yeah. I could buy a pair for $10, throw them in the pool for a couple days, and then be like, see, it's the authentic.
I know, right?
Titanic ones.
And I know Frederick Fleet did survive. And I think he was in his 6th, or it was in the 6th. No, when did he ended up killing himself, but it was after his wife died. But I'm sure the guilt that he held in his life was not, talk about survivor's guilt. Let's talk about this other woman. Like I said, this now has nothing to do with the building. These are just random facts that I actually never knew before, that I was like, I have to talk about this. So a woman who survived the Titanic's sinking later survived the sinking of another ship, the Britannic. So that's right,
I don't know
folks.
why I know that fact. I've heard this fact before.
This is insane. So there's the 3 ships they built. 2 of them sank. So this woman, Violet Jessup, was a stewardess nurse on the Titanic. She was 25 when she survived the sinking of the Titanic. She was instructed to get into a lifeboat while the ship was going down to show women that the lifeboats were safe. So lucky her. They were like, help out. So undeterred by this maritime tragedy, she began to work on the Britannic, dubbed the Titanic too by the media, until it came across a mine that had been planted by a German U-boat in 1916. That ship also sank and she escaped again, but this time with a serious head injury that would affect her for the rest of her life, which of course we all know. I've had a lot of brain injuries and that one hit me. I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. So you got any more Titanic facts for us?
Fuck yeah, I do. Well, speaking of more ships sinking, so those 2 ships sank. So the ship, the SS Californian, is known for having been near the Titanic when it sank and not coming to its aid until it was too late. And so actually the SS California was the one that was like, hey, we're stopped and surrounded by ice. And then they sank 3 years later.
Of course they did.
All these ships were just sinking.
This is why I have never been on a cruise ship.
But ships don't sink like they used to.
I know they don't like they used to. And it's not even a fear of sinking. Here's what I'm saying. If my plane gets grounded, you know what I mean? They're like, hey, we gotta stop. We got some issues. We're gonna touch ground for a little bit. Whatever. Whenever there's an issue on a ship, it is like stories of people like shitting out of windows in the boat.
Well, I was going to say your number one fear of a cruise ship and why you shouldn't go on one is GI, gastrointestinal. That's
like it's just
one.
like
Not
it doesn't.
but that's the biggest problem. And I've had it twice, and it's awful. And you get quarantined to your room. They go on different codes. There's like code orange, code red, and code red is no one can serve themselves at the buffet. Crew that have chances to go up to guest areas cannot. We have to go in sanitization. Even the guests you can't serve yourself. Like everything is like on protocol, and everyone's just in the room throwing up like crazy. If not throwing up, you have bad diarrhea. But
that's what I mean. It's just if you feel sick on a plane, it's like in 8 hours you're on ground like dealing.
But
with
at least
that.
you have like a bed. You're like in sick
something.
in bed. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
But do you know what the number one threat to a cruise ship is?
What is the number one threat to a cruise ship?
Fire. That's the absolute most dangerous thing that could happen on a ship. Is a fire.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we take our fire very seriously here. And if you're ever on a cruise ship, we have certain calls that then like the safety captain or captain will call over, and they do 3 calls and they're universal across all ships. And the fire call is if they go, bravo, 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 deck 5, port side, midship. And they're always like either Greek or Italian. That's why. And so if you hear a bravo call, bravo, 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 you should be scared. That's unless they go, this is a drill. I repeat, this is a drill. They do that a lot too. And then you're like, fuck.
I love that you're telling me that the most dangerous thing on a ship is fire. And I'm pretty sure that I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that literally every single commercial I've ever seen for a cruise ship, when they say like, and our amazing cuisine is like some dude like stir frying shit with like a
the kitchen. That's most of the time the fires are in the kitchen, and they have the safety training that we all have to go through, let alone I'm sure the people once you're working in a kitchen, they have a whole nother, and there's a fire team, and like there's tons of, they happen, but it's so true. I thought you were going to be like, I'm saying fire is the most dangerous thing, yet it was ice that got the Titanic.
No, I think about that all the time in the commercial, because it's not even just like, oh, they're sitting there. It is like a shot of, it's always like a stir fry shot with a huge flame in the kitchen.
That's not good. That's not good. I do want to go back to the SS California sinking though too. It's kind of understandable why it sank. It sank in November 1915, and it was torpedoed by a German submarine during World War I. So. Okay. Same with like the
little different.
Titanic hit a mine that was put by, they were kind of war sinkages. But get this. Okay, this one tripped me out. There was a novella called Futility that was published 14 years before the Titanic set sail and literally predicted the disaster. It was written by American author Morgan Robertson. Yes. Yeah, published in 1898, 14 years before the sail of Titanic. And it was centered around the sinking of a fictional ship called the Titan. And the first, obviously the ship Titanic is like crazy. They were so close. They were almost the same size. They both sank in April due to an iceberg, and were both described as unsinkable ships. And sadly, both had just over the legal amount requirements of lifeboats, which is not enough. But isn't that crazy? And the author was accused of being a psychic, but he simply said that the uncanny similarities were simply the product of his extensive knowledge, saying, I know what I'm writing about. That's all. Damn, that's like scary accurate though, to be like, it was April. It was an iceberg on the Titan. Yeah. Like that, I was like, I don't know. I think you saw the future.
I mean, it honestly could be, I could see him, if he's like worked around people who build ships for a long time, being like, I know the fucking hubris of these people.
Yeah, they're not going to have enough lifeboats. They're going to
they're not going to have enough lifeboats. They're going to ride this thing when they shouldn't. They're going to not think about icebergs as a potential threat. Like,
like the fact that it's called the Titan, a lot of it. And it was
the Titan is the weird part.
And the same
unless the flip side is that the people who built the Titanic read that book and were like, the fuck you say, you think this thing's gonna sink? We'll take the name and add ick at the back.
Titanic. My sister and I, side note, little story time. We used to play this game in the pool where we'd have those like old school blue rafts. And she'd be like, hello, everybody, welcome on to the Titanic. And we would like play Titanic, but she would call it the Titanic. She's like, we are ladies here and we have tits, not ties. So we would board the Titanic and then we would push out and go to the middle of the pool. And then we would yell iceberg or something. And then we would start singing the music to Titanic and both roll into the middle of the mat so that it like sunk in there. And then we would roll off the side. And that was how she'd be like, want to play Titanic? I'm all, yeah. And that was the game.
Both so strange.
So weird. I know, it's so funny though. I can't wait after this. I can't wait to text my sister that. Did you know, to be like, I talked about the Titanic on my podcast. She'll be like, ooh, she'll probably, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so I did not know this either, that part of where the Titanic was built is now a movie studios. And it was first used in 2007 for the filming City of Ember. I don't know, it was a TV show, probably BBC. And it part of Game of Thrones was filmed there.
Wow. Okay.
I know. It's literally called Titanic Studios Incorporated Paint Hole.
Well,
I was like, well, shit. All right, this is my last little random fun fact that has just no rhyme or reason. But there was a group of people, they called them, I forget what they called them, but some people bought tickets and didn't actually board the Titanic and never took the voyage, thank God. And two of the men that were part of that group were Milton Hershey and J.P. Morgan.
Oh.
I know. And thank God. Well, J.P. Morgan, maybe whatever, but Milton Hershey, thank God.
Yeah. All that great chocolate.
I know. Augustus Gloop would have never died, but...
This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. In breaking news, leading scientists worldwide are conducting experiments to determine if Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. However, it appears the study was inconclusive, as the scientists couldn't help but eat all the Reese's. Because when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's. Find Reese's now at a store near you.
At Maximum Mediocrity, people say things like,
I don't dress like this on the regular basis. This isn't my, pooping uniform. This is not
and they also say things like,
The nurses are usually either angels of mercy or whores.
Every episode is a new experience where you get to know people that aren't famous but should be.
Why did my facing Floyd Mayweather in the woods?
My co-host Morgan and I track down the people you didn't know you needed to hear from.
It's like hot sex in a mug.
We are the Maximum Mediocrity Podcast, and we are on all major podcasting platforms. We'll be waiting for you.
I always hear these people who are like, we're going to rebuild the Titanic, or a remodel of the Titanic is set to, supposed to set sail. And I'm torn because it's just like, why would you challenge that fate? But then you've also taught us that, all things considered, the Titanic, if they rebuild it to its exact dimensions, would probably be a much smaller, safer cruise ship than what people are paying for now. It would be
one of those luxury river cruise liners, which, don't get me wrong, that's my dream. I really could care less to ever take a cruise again for obvious reasons, but the smaller luxury river cruise lines, like the Viking ships or a Nile cruise, dying to do that. But I feel like that would be where the Titanic needs to go. And also, if they're doing it exactly replica, do you know how much space would be wasted with just third class passenger, 2 bathtubs? Come on, guys. And I'm sure they're they'll put the crew down there is what they'll do, because I basically lived like a third class passenger on my ship. Steerage.
And that they would charge so much more for that ship than any other thing, because it'd be
so much fucking money, because people want. Well, have you heard that thing? My mom was telling me about it. Actually, they have this ball. It's this steel ball, this crazy thing that's air pressure, oxygen, whatever. They have to do science, and it. I think you pay $500,000, and it takes you down to see the actual Titanic.
See, as cool as that would be,
that's dumb.
I mean, it's dumb. I would like to see. I like watching documentaries that they just show us what's down there.
But I don't need to go. Do you know how scary
that is? The film watcher in me would be like, I'd be the one where we're like, we can't figure out how to bring this back to the surface. Have fun living there forever now. Bye. And then they just sail off and leave me.
It's 13,000 feet down. Like, and when she told me that, I was like, that's not possible to get a human down there. But she was like, tell me, I don't know. And this woman was like, it's my dream. And she did it, but they didn't actually make it. They got like 30 feet down and we're like, we're having a failure. And I was like, no shit. And I was like, that's so funny they got 30 feet because the deepest I've gone scuba diving is 110 feet deep. And I was like, I went down further than they got in this fancy ball with just my tank on my back with my little
fancy
flippers.
Ball. That's what they call it.
It's like I forget how much she said that they were charging. It wasn't like, oh, I mean, I guess that'd be cool. It was just like, how could you ever spend that money? Like, I would much rather go to the moon or the space station.
Well,
like,
look, we've already heard about you going to space. We know that's been from like episode 3. You've wanted to go to space. So all right. Well, Gelsey, if people think that we're in the wrong and that paying an astronomical amount of money to go underwater to see some really disintegrated rubble of the Titanic, where can they tell us how wrong we are?
Yeah, tell us how wrong we are, you idiots. On Instagram, you can find us at @BeforeMyTime_podcast, or on Facebook, just search Before My Time. We'll pop up right on our wall. Send us a DM, comment on our posts. Let us know how wrong we are, or let us know if you're enjoying what you hear. If you have any recommendations or things you want to hear about in future episodes, let us know there as well. And if you're really bored right now, why don't you just hit those 5 stars? And if you're really bored, you want to give us a review, it would be very much appreciated. That helps us get into the listeners' ears of more people just like you that like to hear me talk about random shit for no reason. Yay! All right, see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.